I've changed my plans today. I was going to go out and explore a brand new location, but we've got extreme heat warnings in Alicante province today, and I've decided to stay at home where I can keep cool and have a look back at some of the images I've shot over the last few weeks since the lockdown has eased, and maybe do a bit of a critique, pick some that either haven't worked or haven't worked as well as I would have liked, and maybe a couple that have. And I thought I'd share that with you. I hope you'll enjoy it. If you do, and you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe before you go. Okay, let's start off with this image, which was actually the first image I tried to take when the lockdown eased enough for me to get out with the tripod and the big camera and actually do some proper landscape photography. This was an image that I knew hadn't worked when I took it, but I did show it briefly in the video just to show that I'd taken it and it hadn't worked. But I thought it might be worth looking at why. What I really wanted to get here was a flow through the image. So what I wanted was this space here with some water in, and then the flow going through this gap here. I wanted the flow to continue through and out through the arch, but it doesn't work. You can see this rock here in the foreground overlaps with this rock here in the background, and basically that's because I had one of my tripod legs fully extended down into the pool, the bath if you like, and this was as high as I could get my tripod, and it wasn't high enough to get that view down into the gap that's actually between these two rocks. And likewise I have the same problem here, basically because this top of the rock here is sitting mostly above the horizon, so there's no little bit of sea out there to show you what's actually going on. And likewise the rock here overlaps with this land in the background here, and it's all down to the fact that I couldn't extend my tripod high enough because I'd made the decision to leave the center column at home. And it was actually this image, or the attempt to get in this image, that made me decide to start putting the center column back in the tripod when I was out and about, and removing it in the field if I needed to get very low down. And I mentioned that in my recent review video of the tripod. If you haven't seen that, by the way, I'll stick a link to it up there now. Okay, this image was shot from my first trip up into the mountains, once I was actually allowed to do so. It was a bit of a rush because I could only go out at 8 o'clock in the evening because we were on time restrictions, and I kind of rushed around trying to find a couple of compositions before I lost the light. Now this is one, again, I'm not sure about this. That sky is really nice and dramatic. We've got some nice colours in there, and I've managed, because I used ND Grads, I've managed to keep some quite nice light in the grasses here. The concept behind this image was that we had the grasses as the foreground, and that combined perhaps with the rock here was going to lead the eye in to this area here, which is raised up and it has some buildings on it, a little farm or a finca, and then that of course then leads you on to the mountains and that sky. Now the reason I say I'm not sure about it is actually two things. One is, when I look at the image, I'm not sure that my eye is following that path that I wanted it to follow. And the second thing is, as I look at this, I'm actually not really sure what this image is supposed to be about when I look at it now. Is it about the sky? Is it about the grass? Is it about the finca? Is it about the mountains? Somehow, for me, it's just losing a sense of simplicity and a sense of purpose about what it actually is about. Again, you may disagree with me. I like it, and it works, I think, because of the sky, but somehow I think I could have done something better with this. I'm just not really sure what, given the time constraints I was under. And that's always the problem when you're rushing to get a shot. Maybe you don't have the time to really think it through and get the perfect image out of it. So this image was from a hike that I did around Tibby Reservoir. I did a lot of hiking around and eventually got up to this viewpoint overlooking the old dam which runs out along here. Now I shot this and I like it. It's nice. We've got some nice light here and here and here on the dam. We've got some nice light on these hills here and even up in the background up here. And there's actually some quite nice colours in there. The blue sky is quite appealing. We've got the warm tones in the rocks here. We've even got a little bit of reflections going on down here, and of course we've got the green of the trees. And I liked this image, but I didn't think it was anything particularly special. This was one of those ones where I did the hike and the photo shoot and shot the video on one day, and I actually put the video out the following evening. So again, it was a bit rushed and I didn't have a lot of time to look at what I'd actually achieved and what my options were. And it was about 2 or 3 days after the video went out, I just decided to try a black and white conversion on this. So here is the black and white. Now, I have, as part of this black and white conversion, also increased the contrast. So I've dropped the shadows down and kept the highlights nice and bright. But I actually now really like the mood in this image. It feels completely different to me than the colour one. It could have been shot in a completely different place and at a completely different time. It looks cold. It's got some drama to it, which the other one doesn't have. I don't often think of black and white in the first instance when I'm looking at an image. I think my eye sees colour a lot better than black and white. And probably if I'd sat on this image for a few days before completing the video and putting it out, maybe I would have thought of trying black and white in the first place. But it's still not a portfolio image for me, but it is nice, and I'm happy with the black and white version, much happier with the black and white version than I am with the colour version. Okay, this is an image that I shot on my second trip into the mountains. Now, we were still operating on time slots to go out, and I made the decision on this one to go out in the afternoon, which meant I was going to be out when the sun was high and the light was harsh. And on this trip out, I was actually really struggling to find compositions. The video actually became about trying too hard. I was trying too hard to find an image. And it was only when I relaxed and gave myself some permission to fail that I managed to find this image to shoot. But on the face of it, this image shouldn't work. It was shot when the sun was very high in the sky. It was only about, I don't know, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun was very, very high. The light is actually pretty harsh, although it is being softened a little bit by the canopy of the actual fruit tree. It's an olive tree. In fact, it's one of the old abandoned olive trees that we sometimes find on the terraces here, where they're no longer being farmed and they've just run wild, and they get big and gnarled and quite attractive. But so on the face of it, it shouldn't work. The light is very harsh and coming from above. I've got elements of the sky coming through, up here and here, which you'd normally try to avoid. But because I wanted to keep the shapes and patterns in here, I had no choice but to include them. It's quite messy. There's all sorts of, extra little twigs and things down here, and there's bits of grasses sticking up here. There's leaves coming in from over here. This whole scene here, lots and lots of little twigs and quite messy. And I normally want to strive for, some degree of simplicity in a scene, and I just didn't get it here. However, I think the shape of the tree and the textures in the bark are enough to carry that through, and all of the other sort of messy bits kind of fall away because that is strong enough. This whole area here is strong enough to carry the image, and I was quite pleased that I managed to get this little bush in some light at the time, because I think that just adds a little something extra in the foreground. And of course what we've got is the canopy of the tree is breaking up the light coming in from above, so it's painting light in some areas like here and here and here, and as I said on that little bush and here, but it's leaving shadows like here and here, and up here, which creates some nice contrasts. Again, it's not a portfolio image, but it works, and it just goes to prove, I guess, that you can get interesting images at the wrong time of day if you're prepared to think a little bit differently. And this is the final image that I'm going to talk about. Now, this one was the second image that I shot on a trip up to El Bagnets, near to home. I think it was my third trip out once I could actually get out and do some photography, but I was still limited on both time and distance. It was very, very unusual conditions for here. Even when you get rough seas in this particular location, it's very rare for those waves to come into what they call the baths, the old Roman fish farm, the pools. It's normally relatively calm in there. When I shot this image, I was thinking I was going to end up doing a bit of a composite. As it turned out, I didn't need to. I got really lucky in the way that these waves came in and I managed to capture them. And what I like about this is we've got these beautiful textures in the waves. We've got this spray coming up here, and we've got this lovely sort of almost painterly textures in the waves here, which means I got the exposure time just right to capture those waves. And what I like is these waves create some kind of lead-ins here, which then brings us to this sort of sharp relief of this shaped rock. And then of course we've got nice waves breaking on the outside of the scene as well, and I really like the way that's come out. Now, I chose to crop this down to a 16:9 format in post because the sky is actually pretty boring. It's a blue sky, and I've really minimized it and brought all of the attention in to all of this action that's going on around the rocks and the waves. The only question I guess in my mind is, if this had had a really nice sky, would that have added to the image, or would it have taken away from it? A really nice sky can sometimes take away from what's going on in the foreground. It's unlikely I'm going to see conditions like that again in a hurry in this particular location, so I guess I'm not going to know unless I'm prepared to mess around trying to do a sky replacement, which I probably won't do because I don't really like doing them. Nevertheless, I think this image is certainly one of the best images I've managed to capture in the last few months. Potentially it's one of the best images I've captured so far this year, and it's actually gone into my portfolio, and I'm really happy with this one. Okay, that's it. A quick look back at some image. I wasn't going to take you through every image that I've shot over the last month or so, but I thought a quick look back at a few of them might be interesting. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like, share it on social media, leave me a comment. What do you think of my assessment of these images? As always, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch, so thank you very much, and until the next video, bye.